SeoulScreen, where stories breathe, where characters feel like people we've met, and where we don't just watch K-dramas, we dive deep into the psychology behind every smile, every tear, and every terrible decision. Welcome back, everyone. Today's topic is one that honestly hits harder than most romantic tragedies because it tackles something more real, more painful, and definitely more controversial. We're talking about Dear Ex, a drama that has taken over discussions with its dark themes, twisted relationships, and emotional landmines. And at the center of it all, we have Yoon Jun Seo, played by Kim Young-dae, a kind-hearted protagonist trapped in a maze of manipulation, guilt, trauma, and emotional exhaustion. Dear Ex isn't your typical romance, not even your typical thriller. It's a character study of how love can turn into a burden, how guilt can become a prison, and how one toxic person can shape the entire direction of someone's life. And Jun Seo represents that perfectly. So today I want us to really sit with his story. Not just the events, but the emotional weight behind everything he went through. The 7 tragic circumstances that shaped him, broke him, and eventually pushed him to stand up for himself. And while I talk about these, I want you to think, what would you have done in his position? Would you have survived it? Would you have reacted differently? Let's break down the emotional chaos that is Yoon Jun Seo. Jun Seo was born into a wealthy family, and that's usually how some dramas introduce privilege, comfort, or security. But Dear Ex flips that completely. For Jun Seo, being born into wealth didn't give him an advantage. Instead, it gave him one of his biggest burdens, a toxic mother. Imagine being a child barely old enough to understand relationships and seeing your own mother bring home her affair partner. That alone is enough to confuse a kid, to distort how they learn trust, loyalty, and family. But for Jun Seo, this moment didn't just hurt him, it shaped his future. Because this affair partner wasn't just any random person. Behind him was Baek Ah Jin, a child who would eventually become the center of Jun Seo's emotional universe. And this is where things get even darker. One day, Jun Seo witnessed something no child should ever see. His mother trying to kill Ah Jin. Just sit with that for a second. A mother, an adult, trying to take the life of another child. If you've watched the drama, you know how brutal that moment is. If you haven't, just imagine the shock, the horror, the helplessness. That scene didn't just traumatize him. It birthed a guilt so deep that he carried it into adulthood. He saw his mother try to kill Ah Jin, and from that moment on, he dedicated himself to protecting her, helping her, doing anything he could to make up for something that was never even his fault. And this, in my opinion, is the foundation of Jun Seo's entire tragedy. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt guilty for something you didn't do? Maybe something someone else did, but you felt responsible anyway? Multiply that feeling by 100, and you get Jun Seo. As he grew older, that guilt didn't fade. It grew. It matured into a belief that he owed Ah Jin everything, that he had to save her, that he had to protect her, even at the cost of his own happiness, his morals, his self-worth. But here's the painful truth. Ah Jin is not a helpless girl. She's manipulative, a sociopath, a person who sees emotions not as something to share but something to use. Jun Seo loved her deeply. Genuinely. But love becomes dangerous when the other person sees it as currency. And Ah Jin used Jun Seo's love, guilt, and loyalty for her own gain, over and over again. This part always sparks debate, so I want to ask you, do you think Jun Seo is responsible for what he allowed himself to endure? Or do you think he was trapped from the start, conditioned by trauma? Who shoulders the blame? For me, I think Jun Seo's trauma made him vulnerable, but the manipulation Ah Jin did was intentional. And that combination created a disaster. One of the biggest heartbreaks in the story is when Jun Seo finally realized that the person he loved wasn't just flawed. She was cruel, cold, capable of destroying him without feeling anything. That first heartbreak hits differently when the person you're falling for isn't just incompatible with you, but is actively dismantling your mental health. It's not just rejection. It's betrayal of trust, compassion, and loyalty. And yet, even after that, Jun Seo continued sacrificing. When his mother became gravely ill, he donated one of his kidneys to save her. This alone shows the kind of person he is. Soft-hearted, loyal to a fault, desperate to fix things he didn't break. But pay attention to what comes next. He didn't just donate out of love, he had conditions. He told his mother, Stop interfering with Ah Jin. Stop dragging my grandfather into this. Just let us go. This isn't just a sacrifice. It's a negotiation born out of desperation. He literally gave a part of himself just to protect another person. And yet, after everything he did, he still had one more shock waiting for him. And honestly, I think this revelation is what finally pushed him to break free. He discovered that the grandfather he adored, respected, and credited for everything he achieved wasn't even his biological grandfather. Think about that. You live your life believing that your achievements, your opportunities, your comforts all come from your bloodline. Then suddenly you find out that it's all built on a lie. A lie your family never bothered to clarify. For someone as emotionally fragile as Jun Seo, that realization is enough to shatter everything. And yet somehow, it also frees him. Because when everything you thought you knew collapses, sometimes the only thing left is the truth you build for yourself. And that's exactly what he does. After all the trauma, guilt, manipulation, heartbreak, family secrets, and emotional debts, Jun Seo finally chooses himself. He walks away from Ah Jin's shadow. He stops letting guilt dictate his actions. He stops letting trauma control him. This is why I find his character so compelling. He's not just a victim, he's a survivor. A person who hits rock bottom and chooses to climb back up, even when the world around him keeps crushing him. Let me know your thoughts on this character arc. Do you think Jun Seo made the right choices? Was he too forgiving? Too loyal? Too self-destructive? Or do you see his journey as something necessary for him to grow? One thing I love about Dear X is that it doesn't romanticize toxicity. It doesn't try to justify Ah Jin. It doesn't paint Jun Seo as a perfect martyr. It simply shows people as they are, damaged, confused, human. Jun Seo could have easily become bitter, vengeful, or emotionally numb. But he didn't. He stayed kind. And in a story filled with manipulation and darkness, kindness is the bravest thing you can hold on to. I want to hear from you. Do you think Jun Seo will ever fully heal? Do you think he'll love someone again without carrying old wounds into that relationship? What ending do you want for him? Personally, I hope he finds peace. Not necessarily romance, not necessarily redemption. Just peace. A life where he doesn't feel responsible for fixing others. A life where he doesn't feel indebted to someone else's trauma. A life where he can finally say, I matter too. Dear X gives us a brutally honest portrayal of how emotional manipulation works, how childhood trauma shapes adulthood, and how guilt can be weaponized. And Yoon Jun Seo's story reminds us that sometimes the hardest thing you can do is walk away from the people you love because staying with them hurts you more. So if you're watching Dear X or planning to watch it, pay extra attention to Jun Seo. His pain is not loud. It's quiet, silent. The kind that eats you from the inside but still shows up with kindness anyway. Let's talk in the comments. Do you sympathize with him? Do you think he should have walked away sooner? Or do you think his personality made that impossible? This is SeoulScreen, and thank you for staying with me through this emotional deep dive. If you enjoyed this discussion, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more K-drama analysis. I'll see you in the next one.